And good afternoon. This is episode 53 of Thursdays with Charlie. It's the 20th of May, 2021. We're still in the month of Mary, the month of May. I was hoping that I would have some good news to tell you about the lack of masks in our Diocese of Las Vegas, but we still haven't gotten word from the diocese what the decision will be. I'd like to think that by the weekend they will not be required, but I don't know that for sure. So I think we're going to have to keep saying, bring your mask, and I'll let you know as soon as we can get rid of them. And I am still planning on having a mask burning when we get the final word that they can go away. We'll definitely look forward to that. We'll remind you that this Sunday we have our first show in the Garces Center. It'll be a magic show, no great surprise there. It'll be called In Plain Sight because the magic will be done right in front of you, in plain sight, featuring John Rodolini out of Las Vegas. Tickets are available at the church office, or they'll be available at the door of the show, or they'll be available after the Sunday Masses this weekend, since the show is Sunday afternoon. They're $15 each, and it'll be our first show ever in the Garces Center. So if you'd like to be a part of this historic event, we suggest you get a ticket and come and join us. On Tuesday of this coming week, the 25th of May, I will celebrate 47 years as a priest. It's hard to believe that so many years have gone by. I was ordained on the 25th of May, 1974, at Sacred Heart Cathedral in Newark, New Jersey. Had spent 6 years in the seminary, and I believe I mentioned to you that I'm the senior man in my class, so that's like being the president of your class. There were 21 of us ordained on the 25th of May in 1974 for the Archdiocese of Newark. Definitely want to tell you a little bit about that, and I hope you don't get too bored, but I'd like to tell you some stories about the whole ordination thing, my first Mass, and then my parish assignments. They'll save me having to bore you with this at the Sunday sermon. I'll get it out now, although I probably will tell you a little bit about it on Sunday as well. The last week before ordination in 1974 was a hectic week because we're supposed to have done a retreat, a full week's retreat, and the plan was that we would do the retreat from Sunday until Friday. Then on Friday we would go home and stay with our families, and on Saturday morning we would drive ourselves to the cathedral in Newark to be ordained. During the retreat, from Sunday through Friday, the diocese made the decision that we would not be allowed to go home. We would all stay at the seminary, and we would take a bus down to the cathedral together on Saturday morning. Now, that change may not seem to be too significant, except for the fact that my black suit with my good pants were at home. And I was counting on getting home and getting them so I could be dressed properly for the ordination. So my mother had to make a run-up that week to drop off my pants at the seminary during the retreat. Then on the last night of the retreat, Friday night, when we were having dinner, one of the announcers from the faculty got up and said, "I have good news and bad news for you." He said, the bad news is that they just took Archbishop Thomas Bowen to the hospital as an emergency. And the good news is, before they took him away, he signed the letter giving Bishop Doherty permission to ordain you tomorrow morning. So we knew we were going to be ordained, but it wasn't going to be by the Archbishop of Newark. It was going to be by the Auxiliary Bishop of Newark, John J. Doherty, who was also president of Seton Hall University. Now, you might recall my mentioning to you at some points in the past that I had a little bit of a rocky relationship with the Archbishop of Newark. I had accidentally pushed him down a flight of stairs. I had done other things that had bothered him, and my classmates had joked for all my years in the seminary that I would not be ordained by Archbishop Bowen because he would never let me get that near to him again. And so when they made the announcement about Bishop Doherty doing the ordination, my classmates all laughed and pointed at me. And it was understandable. Now, the next morning, we got up in the morning. We were all excited about being ordained, and we were having breakfast at the seminary. And I remember sitting across the table from one of my classmates, Pat Papalia. And Pat was just sitting there staring at his breakfast. And I was eating mine. It was eggs, it was pancakes. It was really good. And I looked over and I said, Pat, why aren't you having breakfast? And he looked at me and he said, Charlie, do you realize what's going to happen to us today? I said, yeah, we're going to be ordained priests. He said, yeah, isn't that amazing? I can't eat. I said, well, Pat, look at it this way. I think it's amazing too, but I'm going to make sure that I don't collapse and pass out during the ceremony, and I'm going to remember being ordained a priest. That's why I'm having breakfast. You should really, really eat something. And before we went down to the cathedral to be ordained, I had gotten, I didn't get a phone call, I made a phone call to the Ramada Inn in Montvale, New Jersey. That's where I was planning to have my first Mass dinner on the next day after ordination. Now, a first Mass dinner is a lot like a wedding, except there's no bride to do the preparations. So the person being ordained ends up making the preparations. And I must have been a little bit excited or nervous about it, because I kept calling the banquet manager over there, a man by the name of Herb Mushaw, with little details, about this or about that. And I called him the day before ordination, and I was just on the phone with him, and he said, wait a minute. He said, what's going to happen to you tomorrow? And I said, I'm going to be ordained a priest. Do you know that? And he said, what are you going to tell people when you're a priest? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, what are you going to tell them? I said, well, I'm going to tell them to have faith in God. He said, good, have a little faith in me. And he hung up on me. And I was very upset. And when I saw him at the first Mass dinner, I said to him, I said, why did you do that? He said, you just needed to calm down. He said, I had visions of you showing up here early for the dinner and rearranging the stems on the cherries in the fruit cup. You were so excitable. He said, now just go and have a good time. I remember the ordination was beautiful, 21 of us being ordained in the cathedral. Bishop Doherty, who was a classmate, by the way, of Bishop Fulton Sheen, and so they had some similar mannerisms. And part of the ordination is where you're lying face down on the floor, and the bishop prays over you. It's a very impressive ceremony, and then the ordination itself. And then after the ordination, we all moved to positions around the sanctuary. It's a very large one in the cathedral, to give our first blessing. And since I was the senior man in the class, like I said, like the president of the class, I got to stand right next to the main altar at the cathedral to give my first blessing, and my classmates were spread out in a semicircle around from me. And I gave my first blessing, of course, to my mother. And then there were other relatives and friends who came up in my line for the blessing. And one of the people who came up in my line for the first blessing was the girl I had dated in high school, Mary Downey. And Mary, for some reason, chose to wear a beautiful white dress when she came to my ordination. And so she came up to me for the blessing, and I couldn't resist. As I was getting ready to bless her, I said, Mary, did we ever think that the two of us would be here in front of an altar with you in a white dress? And she laughed, and we moved on from that. It was really a wonderful, wonderful ceremony. My mother made my vestments for me. I think I've showed them to you before for my first Mass, the very beautiful, very simple white set. And we gave out prayer cards at the first Mass following the ordination on the following day. And most people had very beautiful prayer cards. I chose one that was a little simpler design, and on the back of it, instead of putting a prayer, I just wrote very simply, "Pray for me. What harm could it do?" And people laughed and smiled, and I said, no, I really mean it. Pray for me. What harm could it do? And I had a beautiful cake for my ordination. It was made white cake, a sheet cake, and then on top of it was a church made entirely out of sugar. And the church was beautiful, had a steeple. In fact, it lasted for almost 40 years following my ordination. The cake didn't, we ate that, but the sugar church at the top. And it had a little plaque in front of it with a phrase from the prophet Micah, about doing good. And on the back of the cake, a friend of mine had made it, on the back of the church on the cake, out of chocolate, she had a little chocolate owl for me, which I had so that I could see the owl, not everybody could see it. I have a picture here. You can't really see it that closely, but it is the picture of the cake with the plaque from the prophet Micah on it. Very elaborate church, and when you think of that all being made out of sugar, it's really, really amazing. Well, on Tuesday, the 25th of May this year, I get to celebrate Mass for the 23,249th time. 23,249 Masses as of this Tuesday. So if you're free on Tuesday morning and you'd like to join us for the 8 o'clock Mass, we're not going to have a party. We had a party for my 40th. That was nice, and I loved it, and it was wonderful. We're just going to have a simple Mass, and love to have our parishioners, those who are available, join me for that Mass on Tuesday for the 23,249th time. Now, you know from my talking to you that I spent 29 years in the military reserve. The first couple of years were in the Navy Reserve. The remaining years, most of them, were in the Air Force Reserve. But I'd like to just today go over what I did. I've had 7 parish assignments in the course of those 47 years. And some were very short and some were very long. And I'd just like to come over and cover that little thing with you, where I'd been. My first assignment was in June of 1974, and it lasted for 3 years until the end of June of 1977. And the way they did assignments back in the 70s in Newark was you didn't have any input as a newly ordained priest. The vicar general and the archbishop made up the assignments, and then on a day after ordination, usually about 2 weeks after, you went down to the cathedral office and they handed you an envelope. And you opened the envelope and you saw where you were going. So I got my envelope, my whole class was there, and I opened my envelope, and I was assigned to Our Lady of Lourdes Parish in Mountainside, New Jersey. Now, the first thing I should tell you is I did not know where Mountainside, New Jersey was. I had to actually ask somebody. It's one of the outlying areas of the Newark Diocese. In fact, it borders on the edge of the diocese going to the southwest. I also found out that Our Lady of Lourdes in Mountainside had a terrible nickname at the time. It was nicknamed Our Lady of the Revolving Door, because the last 4 priests they had sent to the parish had ended up leaving the priesthood from there. I don't know if the Archbishop was trying to tell me something or was trying to break the cycle of things that were going on. But I went there, and it was a wonderful experience. The pastor was an older man, Father Jerry McGarry, and he had founded the parish a few decades before. So he was the founding pastor that I was assigned with. He was a wonderful old man. He had never concelebrated Mass before, and I got him to concelebrate Mass with me on my second Holy Thursday in the parish. And I wasn't sure, he was going to like it. In fact, he told me he wasn't going to like it. But after the Mass, one of his favorite parishioners went up to him and said, "Oh, Father McGarry, you and Father Charlie looked so good up there at the altar together. You looked like father and son." And he loved that so much that I couldn't stop him. He wanted to concelebrate every time. And I had to remind him, "Jerry, we have several Masses. If I take some and you take some, it's easier on the both of us." And while I was in Mountainside, I also did something I had never expected to do. I joined the Mountainside Rescue Squad. Well, I actually didn't plan on joining it, but they needed young men, especially people who were around town all day, because their rescue squad crews did not have many men on it during the day. They had men at night. And we had a major highway running through our town, Route 22 in New Jersey. And so they were looking for men. And a couple of the guys on the rescue squad decided that I should be a member. In fact, two of them, Gary Marquetta and Ron Romack, decided so strongly that I should be a member that one Wednesday night when the squad was having their meeting, they came to the rectory and they kidnapped me. They literally tied my hands up, dragged me into a car, dragged me to the meeting, dumped me out at the meeting, and the president of the rescue squad said, "Why are you here?" And they said, "He wants to join." Well, I was too embarrassed to say I didn't, and so I joined. And it turned out to be one of the great experiences of my life over there. One of the things I got to do in my training to be on the rescue squad was to take a childbirth course at the local hospital. And I figured, well, this is something I never expect to do. And I was home on my day off, and I happened to mention to my mother, she said, what were you doing all week? I said, oh, I'm taking my childbirth course at the hospital in Summit. And she looked at me and she said, "A childbirth course?" I said, "Yeah, we know how in case ever need arises on the rescue squad." She immediately went to the telephone and she called up a friend of hers whose son was a classmate of mine. And she said, "Edna, you wouldn't believe what he's doing now. He's taking a childbirth course." We wouldn't even say the word pregnant in front of them when they were younger. And that's how my mother found out about my childbirth course. I really enjoyed it down there, and there was a county park right next to Mountainside. It was a Union County Park, and in the county park they had a zoo, and you could sponsor an animal in the zoo, providing food for it, providing the decorations where it was kept. And my parishioners knew how much I loved owls, so they sponsored the snow owl at the park in Union County in my name. So every now and then on a Sunday afternoon, I would take a ride up to the park and go see the owl and see my name on a little plaque there, sponsored by Father Charlie Ernick, Mountainside, New Jersey. And so I got to see an owl that really had a nice connection with me. Well, that assignment lasted for 3 years. My second assignment was at Oratory Prep School in Summit, New Jersey from 1977 till 1980. Got up there, and I never really thought I wanted to teach, but the diocese was looking for a priest to teach at that school, and I thought it would be a good idea to try, and I went and tried, and I found out that I really loved it. I loved teaching, and I taught religion from grade 7 through the 12th grade, through seniors. And I really enjoyed the age group. I really enjoyed working with them. It was an all-boys school, and it was very, very beautiful experience. And like I said, I learned to love teaching so very, very much. While I was there during the week, Monday through Friday, I decided I also wanted to keep a parish assignment on weekends, and so I volunteered to help at Our Lady of Victory's parish in Harrington Park on every weekend. So for 3 years, I really didn't have much of a day off during the school year. I would teach all week, and I would spend the weekend at the parishes. And it was always a good experience, and I always enjoyed it. I loved the teaching experience. The next assignment was in July of 1980, and it lasted until January it lasted until 1993 June. Long time, 13 years in that particular assignment. And the assignment was to go as chaplain and teacher to St. Joseph Regional High School in Montvale, New Jersey, which was the high school I had attended and the high school I had graduated from. So it was like a welcome back Cotter experience to go back and teach with some of the people who had taught me. And I knew so much about the school. It was a wonderful time to be there. I was the school chaplain. I was the yearbook moderator. And I taught religion mainly to the sophomores and to the seniors. It was a really good time. And there were 18 men there at the school, Zavarian brothers, who were running the school. So I was also chaplain to this community of 18 Zavarian brothers. I found that to be a really, really great experience. I stayed there for over 13 years. It was a great time. And the Archbishop periodically would say to me, "You know, Charlie, you can't stay here forever. We have to look for a parish." And so In July of 1993, I was sent to a parish, St. Matthew's, in Ridgefield, New Jersey. And I was sent there because the priest who was pastor there was retiring, and they didn't know who was going to be coming in as pastor, but they knew they needed an assistant, whoever it was. And so you were going to a parish unknowing who you would be living with eventually. Well, I got there and they didn't send somebody right away, so they made me temporary administrator of the parish, and I ran it, and I was there for 18 months. Thoroughly enjoyed the parish. It was right by the New Jersey Turnpike, had a really great little parish community. It was a beautiful stone church, and we had a small school connected with it, and I thoroughly enjoyed that experience. In January of 1995, after only 18 months at St. Matthew's, the Archbishop called me and moved me to become pastor at Immaculate Conception Church in Norwood, New Jersey. And I was there for 13 years and 6 months. It's my first and actually only pastorate where I was named pastor. The interesting thing about Immaculate Conception was it had been founded in 1921 by the Carmelite Fathers, and the Carmelites had run the parish for over 70 years. However, in the 1990s, their vocation numbers were dwindling, and so they had told the bishop they were giving up the parish, and he would have to send somebody. So I was the first non-Carmelite, the first diocesan priest to ever go to that parish, Immaculate Conception in Norwood. Had a wonderful time there and thoroughly enjoyed in northern New Jersey, a great section of town, and I really enjoyed the work there. But while I was there, my heart began to think more and more about Nevada and how much I loved being out in Nevada. I would vacation here. I brought my mother out here many times. I came out here with friends. I even ran a couple of parish trips from Immaculate Conception to Nevada. And so I began to ask the bishop if there was any possibility that I could ever go to Nevada. And eventually the answer came that I could. And so in July 2008, I was transferred from the Archdiocese of Newark to work in the Diocese of Las Vegas. I expected to go to a parish in Las Vegas, but at the last minute, literally a couple of weeks before I came out here, I was called by the Diocese of Las Vegas and asked, "Would you go to Laughlin?" And I said I would love it because I had come out here and vacationed here. I knew the founding pastor, Father McShane. I loved the experience of Mass in the casino. I loved the Colorado River. And so I came here in July of 2008, and I have still remained here. Now, the only other parish assignment that I had was in 2010, the diocese was looking for help at St. Francis of Assisi in Henderson, and so for 5 months I was also the temporary administrator of St. Francis of Assisi in Henderson. But the remaining time I was here, and I've considered this assignment to be almost my longest. Now, my longest assignment was the school assignment at St. Joe's, where I had been for 13 years and 6 months. And this July, I complete 13 years as administrator here at St. John the Baptist. So if I can make it until January 1st, 2022, I will begin on my 13 years, 6 months plus 1 day, and that will make this my longest assignment ever. Certainly has been my favorite assignment, I have to say. Now, if you look in your bulletins this week, I repeated something that I had put in the bulletin last week about being a priest. And I really want to repeat it because I really do believe it. I have always loved being a priest. It is truly awesome to celebrate Mass each day and to preach and share the Word of God with you. There is nothing else in life that I could have done that could possibly have made me any happier. And hopefully I have done a little good along the way for the Lord and for His people. Thank you for being a part of my life's journey and for letting me be a part of yours here in paradise. And as I said on those cards that I had printed up for my ordination and first Mass, pray for me. What harm could it do? Now, with that in mind, I mentioned that I had been cleaning in my house, and I found a couple of packs of these old cards that I had made up 2 years ago in 2019 for my 45th anniversary. Got a lot of old pictures and stuff on it, so I'm going to have these at church over the weekend. Please feel free to take one. You get to see what I looked like with hair that had color. Get to see some of my friends back from my past. Now it's time for a visit from Pascal. And he brings us an appropriate thing. I had never translated my card into Latin. Pray for me, what harm could it do? And in Latin, Orate pro me. Quod Nocere Posset Facere. What possible harm could it do? God bless and have a wonderful week.